morning, good afternoon, good evening, yWhales, wherever in the world you are today. Today we're having a little bit of fun. We've got Russell out there in the Hawaii area. So time zones are working in our favor for once. It rarely happens. But this is going to be a really good conversation, I think, about not only communities, but most importantly, just kind of what it means to have kind of critical mass, and to have ideas be able to get to critical mass, you need to have a confluence. And so to really have, a number of people get together, sharing ideas, sharing concepts, and sharing their energy is huge for any asset class. And for Web3 especially, to see the size and scale of these grow over the last decade, it went from like 2 or 3 people, in a room talking about Bitcoin, to conventions of thousands of people. And now we're here looking at kind of the next wave of it, of a couple people talking about, hey, the internet computer of Ethereum, to now these massive conferences of which are sold out, as soon as they open up. So Russell, let's go ahead and before we talk into a number of your projects today, a little bit of where you came from and how you got here today.
Sure. I came from very interesting place. I was lucky enough when I first started doing consulting to work on the first U.S.-based credit card website. Now, I know it's hard to believe that that credit cards weren't always connected, but back in the late '90s, you couldn't look at your bill online and everything. And I somehow got lucky enough to get sent to this project, which was like, oh, maybe it'll work, with Universal Card Services, AT&T Universal Card Services. And we connected their website to, you could log in, check your bill, and even pay other AT&T related bills using the website, which was, nobody had done anything like that before. And of course, I was hooked because it was just about the coolest thing. We were pulling data from mainframes, bringing it all to the web, using these new things called HTTP applets, which were the precursors to servlets. Yep. And it was mind-blowing how much we could do. I was hooked. And from there, I went and did consulting for like Sun Microsystems. This is back when Java was a relatively new language. And then eventually got tired of working in consulting and moved to Hawaii to work for a company called Data House, where I did their distributed technology. I lasted there a couple of years before starting my own thing and working with mainly Web2 businesses that were leveraging web systems. And after getting sick and tired of traveling all over the Pacific Rim and Canada and the U.S. for that, I decided I would try and stay in Hawaii for a while, and started working at Hawaii Information Consortium. And so they were the what's called self-funded e-government. So they provided the software to do all of state government at no cost to the state. All they had to do was, there was a transaction fee you'd add on. And so while I was there for about 13 years, I became the president, and we were processing about $2 billion in payments a year for the state. So taxes. The most popular thing, for people that don't live in Hawaii, was ordering Obama's birth certificate. Those of you who remember will know what I'm talking about. And it was really, really exciting stuff. What was kind of weird was Hawaii was the first state to actually legalize medicinal cannabis from the legislature, and not from a ballot motion. So $10,000 license fee. How are people going to pay it when banks won't let them do their money? So I started like, okay, what do I have? Oh, Bitcoin. That looks cool. I went to South by Southwest in 2013, went to all the Bitcoin stuff, and I was like, okay, I'm hooked. I got this close to getting the state of Hawaii to be able to accept cryptocurrency at that time. And then the state, or the legislators, changed the bill to require a paper check. And that nixed that, but I was still hooked. And about 2.5 years later, started my own non-custodial cryptocurrency payment system called WAMPay, which was built on Bitcoin. Spent the next 2.5-3 years going around evangelizing, mostly setting people up with their own wallets, showing them what a Bitcoin wallet was, what it meant to own your own keys. What it meant to be able to set your priority for payments going through a system, and that was a blast. Although I think if I had been in any other country other than the United States, it would have been much easier and much more fun. But in the United States, with all the tax implications of spending crypto and all that stuff, it was a very difficult thing. It was mainly for regulated industries like cannabis, those kinds of applications, and had a lot of companies that really got a lot out of it. But I realized through all that our biggest problem wasn't that we couldn't make electronic payments, because clearly electronic payments work. They work really well in a distributed way with Bitcoin, with Ethereum, with all the different technologies around. But what we did lack was digital identity. And so I took a position with the state of Colorado as the director of digital transformation. And my two biggest priorities, aside from getting remote work working, which would happen amazingly for other purposes.
Yeah, I was going to say something really helped push that initiative forward. I
can't remember what it is, but it was pretty significant at the time. I ran the My Colorado program, which was the first digital driver's license in the United States, and you have a legal digital driver's license that you have on your phone. You can also share the information electronically to provide for real-time know your customer assurance, which like financial institutions use, all that kind of stuff. And then the other thing was accepting cryptocurrency for taxes. And so really once that was done within the state, there weren't a lot of other really big things that I wanted to do. But one of the things
you already fixed government. So, let's move on.
Fixed government in Hawaii. That was done. Fixed that. I was like, okay, what next? But while I was there, we started this program called ColoradoJam. And for anyone who's worked with government, you know that in order to keep things honest, right, you have these procurement rules. More often than not, they really just keep established players in. But they're made so that it's at least transparent or more transparent. And that meant that the state can't really say, oh, we're going to use this hot new Web3 blockchain technology to do X, because first of all, the product's not done yet and we're not sure it's going to work, and too many unknowns and no real way to respond to an RFP. So what we did is we got the community together, the community around ETH Denver, and the blockchain events that are around in Colorado, to fund projects that basically used subject matter experts from the state of Colorado to say, okay, let's see if we can solve this problem. If we do a good job, then you'll say, hey, they did great, and then we can go on. We have business viability, which is urgently important for a new business, a happy customer. And then you have now you can go on and create responses to RFPs or other sorts of procurements so you can work in the business. And that sort of ended up morphing into my next position, which is the entrepreneur in residence for Bufficorn Ventures, which is a part of ETH Denver. And we fund super duper early stage blockchain and Web3 businesses, so that they can get to whatever the next phase is, whether that's like MVP, seed stage, whether it's acquisition, they want to get more customers, or they just want to see if they can make it from there.
That's an amazing story. And really, again, from so many versatile asset classes, you've had to navigate, government regulation, which has not always been on your side. I think that, cryptocurrencies have had one of the hardest starts of any asset class there is. You were around for the birth of Web 1, and the government gave a ton of free reign to say, go figure it out. Sales tax, don't worry about it. You just see if this works. And that's what really helped us create, Web 1 today. So I love hearing that, that there's a couple good degens like yourself that are in the ranks of the rank and file that don't understand this stuff in any way, shape, or form. And that you're there from truly that dev level of you get the development cycles, you get the what it takes to build these and code these, and why poor regulations hurt. Not just the industry overall, but specifically individual states or countries.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer regen to degen, because I think that the projects I prefer to be involved in are generating more value for the community at large. But you're right, and I will say this: and I've heard you in other interviews that you've done talk about like how the tax implications were much more favorable for Web 1 and Web 2 companies, and really in the cloud you had to contend with changing people's minds about the technology, but you didn't have to deal with all these other things. They were also operating within a corporate construct that existed.
Of course.
Right? Amazon was a company, and when the thing that really, freaks everyone out who's not into this, and if you're in it, it freaks you out, but in a good way, is that there's a new organization, that a new type of business organization, a new type of working together that is wholly unfamiliar to regulators.
Mm-hmm.
And to do the things that, taxing and stuff, nobody likes that, but to really protect you. I don't know if many of your listeners got caught up in, the Arrows stuff or Celsius. I'd had some money in Celsius, and I was dumb and left my money in there, even though
the CEO of Celsius is a YPO member.
Oh, well,
so,
I won't say anything bad about
other
than I wish I could get my money back.
You and a lot of other people. Don't worry, the Warriors are going to take care of that for you.
Yeah, but the thing here is that we have like a totally new way of organizing and doing business that even internally we're trying to, like, if you're in a DAO, you're trying to figure out how do we work together? How do we get things actually done? That's one of the coolest things in Colorado that we have a lot of times Colorado is known as, to people in the cooperative world, the world of limited cooperatives, the Delaware of cooperatives. Because our cooperative structure that you can register a business as a limited cooperative association is 100% compatible with DAO governance.
Yep.
So it's different enough to where most places don't know what to do with a DAO, which is normally what you'd set up for a true distributed blockchain type organization, and what many people didn't do. Right? They said, "Oh, we're a DAO. We don't need an organization," and that freaks regulators out every which way, and it freaks investors out. It's hard for investors to get into that, which is why they go to individuals, which is why it seems overly scammy in a lot of ways, right? Everybody's
let's
trying
also
to show
be clear.
There's
some in the industry that have not helped our case for validity and responsibleness, based on even a few of the names you mentioned there before that did have true, corporate tax structures, and still, kind of just relied on nuances that they believed they didn't need to, like math, like that wasn't relevant for a lot of these cases that were 20xing with no liquidity.
Like, why?
So.
Why is that happening? Yeah.
So pivoting over here, and I, number one, I completely, my regulation talk, I think that if you gave cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology just one law that we could apply in the books that exist today, it'd be the 1031 like kind of exchange. And I think that overnight that would dynamically bring institutional investors in that could go from Bitcoin to wrap Bitcoin, ETH, bouncing back and forth between all these coins without the tax implications would massively grow an industry. So those are the types of ideas that I really think of. But the reason why I am so excited about what you specifically do with ColoradoJam, ETH Denver, and I love hearing, I want to talk a little bit more about Bufficorn Ventures, is the fact that when you have these large conventions, when you have these large talks, it's the number one time that you will get the legislatures, that you will get the staffers to show up and listen to these talks from the people that actually know what they're doing. Talk a little bit about kind of how you put this on and how you help facilitate the education of everyone from the regens and the degens all the way down to kind of the no corners.
So that's great. The ETH Denver at its core ethos are building bidlers, right? Builders, mm-hmm. bringing new people in. So every year that ETH Denver is there, we estimate roughly 30 to 50% of the people coming. This is their defining moments in Web3 and blockchain. This is where they're getting their first exposure, where they're learning how to use the technology. The event is 100% free. When you come, you join something called the SporkDAO, which is our DAO, our cooperative. It's a limited cooperative association. So you get a membership in that, you get a community around there. And what we do is we bring people in. There's like 5 days before where you can just get ready for the event, right? And learn technology. So they have platforms coming, doing classes. We have code alongs. We have to get teams prepared. And then the whole event is really built around the hackathon. The hackathon is the most important thing that's going on. There's talks going on, there's parties, there's also, and anybody who's there, have you been?
I am 100% going to be there this year.
Okay, that's the right answer. That's the right answer. But it is not just an enormous amount of fun, but it's the kind of experience that can change many people's lives and has.
Good.
And I think what's really cool, and it's the part that's not quite as exciting most of the time, but we try to make it, is the last 3 years, even the one that we had that was virtual, we have had 2 different governors represented, right? So we've had Governor Polis, who's governor of Colorado. We've had the governor of Wyoming come for 2 years. Last year, we had a big session that I was actually able to talk to Tung Chan, who's our Commissioner of Securities. Now, so she regulates, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. She was the general counsel for the Ethereum Foundation back in the day. So she has enormous experience. A lot of government track folks came to ETH Denver to see what can happen. And it's one of those things where the more often you get these folks together and that they can see good things happening, then they want to find a way to make a regulatory path that feels safe. You have somebody like Tung, who I actually worked with her when she was in Hawaii as well. And she takes her job, and as do most regulators, really seriously, in that they want to protect people who are taking their extra $100 that they have, that they would invest, and they're going to put it into something else. They don't want them to lose that money, because that might be the money they were putting away to pay for their kids' education or to pay for a car. Or, we're not talking about protecting people who are making a reasonable income. We're talking about protecting the majority of people. And that's really what they're most interested in. Now, the tax situation, that's separate. I'm not going to defend anybody on the tax.
Yeah,
stuff.
but to pause real quick and to provide some color, right? This is a hugely important part of this entire process. That there's a lot of ways to lose money, and there's a lot of risks of which people will take to lose money. But when they lose money in a way that they don't believe they could have lost money, if you deposit money into a bank, or let's just pick on Celsius, they're right here. If you deposit into Celsius and you believe that I deposited this money, irregardless of hey, they're giving these great APYs. If they suddenly one day discontinue those APYs, you still should be able to pull your original capital back out. Or hey, if you invested in a coin that went down, there's still some liquidity. There still should be something that you should get back versus nothing. That's where I do believe this entire industry has kind of failed itself for getting a little too aggressive on the multipliers and thinking that the bull run, once it starts, is always going to run. It does turn around, and if you're the one left holding the bag, it's a really bad place to be. And that's why I don't blame regulators for stepping in and saying, whoa, what do you mean zero? Like, zero is not an option here.
Right. I think you're absolutely right. And what was funny in the Celsius situation, I remember when they sent out the new terms and agreements, and I looked through it and I was like, this seems messed up, but and I know better. And I was like, but of course they're they're regulated. They were using a custodial a company to have custody of all the funds. Oh, they're on the level. I didn't take the extra 55 seconds it probably would have taken to say, you know what, this isn't the deal I signed up for.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what it comes down to. They changed their terms to say, oh, you're now giving us your money and we're putting into stuff. We're no longer in custody of your funds. You're giving it to us and we're giving you a return. And when that language changes legally, you end up where we are now.
Yeah. And nobody reads terms of
Right.
services. There's, it's the nuance, and that's where you need, again, I am not a proponent of regulation in any way, shape, or form, but we're going to get it, and it might as well be common sense regulation that does adhere towards not just where we are today, but where we need to go in the future. And I think that's one of the things I talk about the most, and the things that we as yWhale members and really the leaders around the globe is not just U.S. regulations, but we need some commonality around the globe on how to manage this new evolving technology. The internet is the Web 1 and Web 2 are still broken today by archaic contracts of where digital media can reside. Like the fact that when a studio says, hey, we want to put out this song or this movie, it really can't go global in the same time and second. It has to go through these archaic contracts that have been around before the technology existed. And so now all of a sudden we're trying to evolve to Web 3, and we still haven't resolved a lot of these old laws that are still in the books and workflows, and it's just going to compound and get worse. So
Sure.
what's your, when you guys are talking about and planning and inviting, governors and everything else, how do you help give them a primer so they even understand the language that's being spoken at these conferences? Because, it's a whole different world that they're walking
Yeah.
into.
I mean, nomenclature is the single most important thing, right? And when you talk about, for instance, I can talk about NFTs and I can talk about all this stuff, and regulators will be like, sitting erect there. They're like, okay, this is serious. And I can talk about digital collectibles, and they're like, oh yeah, digital collectibles. That's great. I love digital collectibles. My kids have them, whatever. They have LOL kids or whatever it is. It's so interesting. Those are the same things. A digital collectible can be an NFT. No. So what we have to do is there is triggering language. This is just like when you deal with a spouse or something like that. There's triggering language that we have to get around. And I think, from my part, the most important thing that we can do to find common ground is if you look at the whole of blockchain and Web3, there's a small portion of it that is financial, things that could be considered securities.
Yeah.
And then there is a huge swath of other things. Now, people right away glean on to the things that the shiny things that are easiest to implement, like swappers and tokens and all that stuff. But what we really need to do is mainstream this technology and show regulators that there's a real benefit to it. I mean, if you remember, you may not, I don't know. When online trading first came on, I think it was Daytech that brought it on. Schwab and all the big companies were like, oh yeah, people they want to have a relationship with their trader.
Yeah.
I'm a trusted member of the family, and they could not have been more wrong, because people want the ability to make that decision themselves. It's like what Martin Luther did to the Catholic Church, and they let people have a personal relationship with their God instead of having to go through a priest to have a relationship with God. And not to say that your investments are God. It's just a thing.
Don't worry. You can offend anyone on the show, and it means
I'm
nothing.
glad.
So,
but I think that's the real key. And really, when you talk about things like digital identity, when you talk about digital collectibles, when you talk about gamification, when you talk about transparency, when you talk about, you mentioned HelloSign and stuff like that all the time on the show, like these kinds of things, this technology, leveraging blockchain in a way that's just stupid easy. And basically you're leveraging these worldwide blockchains as a method for delivering zero knowledge proofs.
Yep.
Then suddenly, you're enabling a whole new level of technology that is potentially orders of magnitude larger than the internet did. Right.
Oh,
and I think that the best thing that we can do for ourselves inside of our community, our community of blockchain and Web3 people, is focus on the things that improve the most people's lives. Find ways to make the other 99% who hasn't found the technology see that it works for them. to the point to which people don't talk about Web3 anymore because they just talk about solutions. Just like nobody says, "Oh yeah, I'm a database developer." If they do, they're dorks, right? But they just know, "Oh, I develop
Yeah.
applications."
So on that note, and I completely agree, Web3 will be mainstream when no one talks about the technology anymore. There's absolutely conferences out there for Amazon S3. There's Mac dev conferences. There's all these dev conferences that exist for all of us true hardcore geeks that really want to understand, what's the difference of this 1 and 0 that they just made. Where's the evolution of the code going? But for 99.9% of people, like, I turned on my computer, does it work? I visited a website, is it fast? And now we need to get to the point where, like, I bought an asset or I own something on online. I need it to be verifiable, and I need it to be the true source of anyone knows this is mine. I own this, and if I sell it, then it's gone, and this is a permanent thing. Right now, my biggest challenge I have is this is like very much like Web 1. Like, you had to actually know what servers you're dialing into. And let's be clear, I am an ETH fan, but I'm not an ETH maxi. I believe Ethereum will be around most likely forever if you guys can continue what you're doing. But I believe there's going to be multiple chains, many chains. In fact, we had a large conversation about public versus private blockchains. And I can say that there's a lot of interest in private blockchain technology. And I think that's still a huge win, because if you have the more coders, the more companies that are utilizing the blockchain ledger, the more it integrates into everything else that Ethereum has been doing over the last few years. But again, when ETH Denver started, like, Ethereum was it. Like, there was Bitcoin, there was Ethereum, and then everything else was a shitcoin.
Right.
How is the conference evolving today, as there are some major viable alternatives, as well as viable integrations of level 2s and level 0s into the Ethereum ecosystem?
Well, obviously the level 2s dig it because it's part of that. But Near has been there from the beginning. Lots of the Avalanche. If you go, I'm sure next year when we have ETH Denver at the end of February, people will be wearing the source code on their T-shirt. That's trying to get themselves in trouble for having the code to the contract for for Avalanche or Tornado Cash. Actually, for Tornado Cash, they're going to have it has expanded enormously. And what's interesting is I was not a Bitcoin maxi, but I was definitely a Bitcoiner because it worked, right? Because you could use it right then. And my company was based on that when I went to the first ETH Denver, and people were like, oh, Bitcoin, huh? But I am not a maxi for anything, but I do recognize that certain things are good for certain purposes. And I also recognize that public blockchains are great for public uses, but for private uses, you're not going to. Now, I'm much less interested in private blockchains, to be quite frank. I think that enterprises have had plenty of money to do things, and they will continue to have plenty of money to do things. But what I am more interested in doing is working with technology that enables public goods or improvement in competition of smaller distributed teams, of providing better solutions to people. And I think you get that from a public blockchain. So I would say maybe I'm a public blockchain maxi.
And I think that's a great answer. And because at the end of the day, irregardless, we're such a small asset class. Today we sit under $1 trillion for the entire cryptocurrency market class. We peaked out right around $3 trillion. And let's be clear, that's a tiny amount of money. Like, that's in the global scale. I mean, we've barely even scratched the surface. There's individual banks with $10 trillion under assets, and so it's hard to believe and think about that. But
let me ask you though. Would you ever say that about cloud? You say, oh, well, cloud technology as an asset class, it doesn't even make sense.
No, because that's the thing is I do look at blockchain in the cryptocurrency market as a public asset class. It is public. Anyone in the world, regardless of New Yorkers, can invest, can deploy, and can do lots of really cool, amazing things. And it doesn't involve money. It just means, do you have at the most basic level? To me, take a half step back. I think what YGG Games and Axie Infinity did with play to earn, just proof of concept. Do I love everything they're doing? No, I think there's a long way to go, but it showcased a technology that no one knew was even possible. That you could take kids out of sweatshops and out of rice paddies and give them value on a global scale, with minimal training, minimal investment. And I think that that's really the innovations that I'm so excited about of public blockchains and private blockchains, that suddenly there's access that's not gated by any one gatekeeper. And I think that's the crux of what we're after here is this decentralization and banking the unbanked. And banking may mean something different to the next few generations than what it means to those of us that have been around for a few decades.
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically when we talk about banking, the unbanked, we don't talk about that anymore because I think people have started realizing that banking is an old concept
Mm-hmm.
for most people. Like that people that were banking themselves with cash in their mattresses now have a way of interacting with the entire world, of end running money transmission companies, of end running all of that, because the truth is that you only use a bank if you need one or want one. And we have a lot of confidence in our banking. And I have bank accounts. And like Juno, like on Juno, there's a great example of you get an FDIC account, insured bank account, and you get essentially your own free exchange
Yep.
with a service like that. That's a great, merging of the technologies for people who have the privilege of having enough assets to mean something, for that to mean something to them.
Yep.
But the vast majority of people, the truth of it is, don't need banks. So what does infuriate me is when companies come out and say, "Oh, we're crypto," and it's really just a debit card. Like that is an insult to me because that's not doing anything but adding a crypto layer on top of on top of banking, which is useful for people who are in it already and who want to get some cool perks out of it. But it doesn't really solve any of the problems around crypto or around people's access.
Talk to me about your top, 2 or 3, problems around crypto that you think that everyone should be at least thinking of or focused on in some way.
Well, I think that right now the biggest issue is identity. No matter what side of the fence you are, whether you're a regulator or you're a super libertarian, privacy addict, or anywhere in between, or somebody who has means or doesn't have means, is that tying you're getting a digital identity is your key to all this great technology that we have, right? I think last year or 2 years ago, I gave a talk at ETH Denver about digital identity is your key to accessing the information superhighway. Intentionally, that's the old name for the internet, right? But when your on-ramp is analog, if you're living in Barbados, you have to have like a 3-month relationship with a banker before they'll believe that they should let you have a bank account. And that's not unique around developing countries. That's totally alien to us as Americans and Canadians and Europeans, to our experience, right? But it is the truth. Your employment, right? Your benefits are tied in the United States to your employer, or in other countries maybe to your status as a citizen. Well, why can't you have a digital relationship with providers to get you the access to those things? So I think the most impactful thing will be digital identity, and digital
I
identity
agree.
will then enable, the payment technology is there, the acceptance is coming. You look at all the cool stuff with like accepting USDC on Polygon and all this kind of, it's pretty cool stuff. So that I think is already in motion. I don't have to worry too much about it. The other is in organizations, and business, and a new type of capitalism that is regenerative instead of extractive. Right. And that is another of the things I'm so excited, and why I was so excited to get into ETH Denver and Bufficorn Ventures, is that really, if you're not playing a zero sum game, don't play like you're in a zero sum game. right?
Yep.
Recognize that you know, the old adage, oh, you know, a rising sea raises all ships. Um, but the truth of it is that's something that you say to the people with the little ships because they're not going to benefit as much. I think that DAOs and cooperatives are going to come out of the next year, 2 years as as a viable business model or organizational model that will change the agricultural industry, that will change employment, like it is with Opolis nowadays, that will change the way we engage in enterprises, the way that we can lend our support. Um, Political action committees right now are, you know, are ridiculous. I mean, I could see that changing. You look at what Lobby 3 is trying to do. Um, it is so interesting. All the different opportunities we have just just between cooperative actions via DAOs and digital identity. And the key to making both of those work is normalizing this technology and delivered and changing it from being a discussion is this a security or not, or you know what's the financial benefit to we're counting we're only counting the part of our economy that or our ecosystem that can be quantized easily in value. So that's why I brought the thing about, oh, what's the market cap for, you know, blockchain,
Yeah. No. No.
whereas there's all this other stuff that actually is worth more than everything that we're talking about. But we don't have a really easy way to talk about it. So we only talk about the one that we know how, and that limits people's minds.
I love that
Wow, that
idea.
was really divergent. I'm sorry about
No,
that.
no, no.
But
Again, we've got an amazing person like you, and this is where it's really helpful for yWhales and all of our viewers that watch this, because we come at this from the business perspective. There is a gazillion podcasts and tons of talk around, you know, theoretical use cases and you know, when moon and all these other crazy things. But at the end of the day, we're never going to be taken seriously, and we're never going to be able to implement the technology that even exists today. Forget the stuff in the future. If it's not cost effective compared to the current products that exist today, if using cryptocurrencies may cost you less to move the money and be faster, but if tax wise you're getting crushed on the back end, you know, I can tell you there's no CFO on the planet that's going to go, you know what I really want to do, what's really going to help our business is to increase our transaction costs by 20-30x. Like, there's no benefit to it. You've
right.
eliminated that. So I think, you know, the DMCA gets its you know, the beatings every now and then, but it did allow for digital music to exist. It did take kind of the lessons we learned from Napster and say, hey, we need to figure out something going forward. So Russell, you know, as you kind of spin around and go with this, where do you see, and I want to kind of bring it back to ETH Denver and everything else, where do you see this progressing? Is it going to stay a regional, you know, regional show? But it seems like you've added a lot of extra, you know, kind of layers onto this already.
Well, it's not regional. It hasn't been for a long time. We have 90, I think last year we had 92 countries present.
Wow.
People actually coming in. We've grown massively every year. Last year we had, I think, almost 9,000 people show up. This year we have moved our location because it was so well attended. Last year we got feedback from people, and they didn't let we sort of were taking like a South by Southwest. We had different locations all around. They didn't like walking around in the snow. Go figure. What's wrong with you guys? Aren't you Bufficorns? But they so we've moved to a new location, National Western. It can handle 40,000 people. We're expecting somewhere between 20 and 30,000 people to come this year, and we're ready for it to be amazing. You know, last week was Bogota DevCon. They set a pretty high bar. Now they had 2.5 years to make the event, and it showed. It was great, but ETH Denver is going to even go further with the opportunities for growth, opportunity. What I want to say is, if you want to learn more about this space, there is no single event you can go to. You know, and it's been dubbed as like the longest running Web3 experiment on the planet. And is it successful? Year over year, it seems to have been. Do we have companies that come out of the hackathons that are successful? Yes, we have lots of them. That's why we started Bufficorn Ventures. Do we have a community of people whose lives have changed as a result of being exposed to this, being exposed to the community we have? We have an insanely active Discord server all throughout the year, with mentorship programs and various code along programs and different things going on. We're active in all the other events that are going on, the more conference type stuff. Um, but I think no matter what level you are, from a total green noob just out of school to somebody who has real serious chops, you're going to find that there's things to learn, there's networking to do, there's amazing. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned it, as long as you agree to join the DAO, which is free, the event is free. And
Easy.
that means all the meals, all the food, all the entertainment, all the drinks, all the education, everything that you get is 100% free and the best swag in the entire industry. So there's no good reason. This is what you get as being part of a community, right? This is what you get as being part of the SporkDAO community. And this is just the beginning, right? There's a lot more.
I love it. I love it. So real quick, Russell, as we bring this to the close, and again, I'm sure we're going to have another follow-up conversation here soon about a number of these items. I'm sure the dates are on your website, but where's the best place for everyone to kind of find information on ETH Denver, SporkDAO, and Bufficorn?
Sure. So the best place to go is ETHDenver.com. And that has all the information about the pre-events, the event itself, post-events. We are going to be releasing the first round of applications so that you can apply to come. That will be coming along in the next 3 or 4 weeks. A lot of people want to arrange travel and things like that, so we try to get it out as soon as we can. There's more coming on Bufficorn Ventures, which is the investment arm of ETH Denver as well. So we closed up this year. We invest almost exclusively in teams that come out of ETH Denver, the SporkDAO community, a lot from hackathons. Great. And we provide enough funding for them to work full time on their project for 6 to 9 to 12 months, depending on the actual project that they're on, and that they'll come around the next ETH Denver and show everyone what they've got and move on to the next phase of their business. We're going to have ColoradoJam pilots, so all over the place. We're actually going to have one at the state capitol where you can see digital twinning and NFT art in the capitol. It's actually going to be the most accessible art exhibit ever in the history of Colorado, because you're not going to have to be present for it. And there are many art exhibits that are in rooms that are for meetings only, so only a handful of people are ever in there. So this is the first time that everyone's going to have access to all those things. And so you can see we're going on a lot of different fronts to try and make sure everybody knows, first of all, what it can mean to them, experience today that they can do it, as well as giving them a glimpse of the technology and what is going to be there in the near future. I can't think of a better time to do it than in the down market like this is. The focus that you can have on a product at a time like this, as opposed to the blustery, year ago that we had where everybody's like, oh, everybody's pivoting every 12 seconds. It's a great time to be building. It's a great time to be working with those companies. And ETH Denver this year is going to be absolutely amazing.
Well, I think we're going to have to do a very large yWhales meetup there. We have a ton of members that are in the area, but I think you've made it very clear that if we're serious about Web3, if we're serious about kind of helping promote blockchain architecture overall, regardless of whether you're an ETH maxi or a Bitcoin maxi, ETH Denver is going to be the highlight of the year. And I really appreciate, Russell, you and your team's time to put these things together. This is an amazing way to facilitate showcasing the technology and the communities in a way that I think get a really bad rap, mostly in the media. That people can come, and I know many people that have attended your events since year one. And they just say it is a fantastically run event. I generally don't leave my little crypto cave here, but I will absolutely be seeing you.
Make an exception this time.
I will. 100%. I'm down Highway 70. It's not that far of a drive. Yeah. So flight drive, whatever the case is, we'll definitely see you there. But for all of yWhales, we thank you for what you do. We are excited for all this, and for everyone watching. This has been Russell with laundry list of projects here. We've got SporkDAO, Bufficorn Ventures, ColoradoJam, and most importantly, ETH Denver. And Russell, I also thank you just for your overall candor that you have towards regulation and common sense approach towards, we both have to live in the same world. Let's try to find a happy median and move forward and that focus on education issues. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. And aloha, everybody. For the
Fabulous.
shaka.
Yeah. Enjoy your vacation. yWhales. That's Russell with with a massive list of projects. Russell, we'll catch you next time. yWhales.
Thanks.
Be good.